everybody! Today the Bookworms are going to be reading The BFG by Roald Dahl and illustrated by Quentin Blake. Chapter 10, Frobscottle and Whizpoppers. By now, Sophie was beginning to feel not only extremely hungry but very thirsty as well. Had she been at home, she would have been finished her breakfast long ago. "Are you sure there's nothing else to eat around here except those disgusting smelly snozzcumbers?" she asked. "Not even a fizzwinkle," answered the big friendly giant. "In that case, may I please have a little water?" she said. "Water?" said the BFG, frowning mightily. "What is water?" "We drink it," Sophie said. "What do you drink?" "Frobscottle," announced the BFG. "All giants is drinking Frobscottle." "Is it as nasty as your snozzcumbers?" Sophie asked. "Nasty?" cried the BFG. "Never is it nasty. Frobscottle is sweet and jumbly." He got up from his chair and went to a second huge cupboard. He opened it and took out a glass bottle that must have been 6 feet tall. The liquid inside it was pale green, and the bottle was half full. "Here is Frobscottle," he cried, holding the bottle up proud and high as though it contained some rare wine. "Delumptious fizzy Frobscottle," he shouted. He gave it a shake and the green stuff began to fizz like mad. "But look, it's fizzing the wrong way," Sophie cried. And indeed it was. The bubbles, instead of traveling upwards and bursting on the surface, were shooting downwards and bursting at the bottom. A pale green frothy fizz was forming at the bottom of the bottle. "What on earth is you meaning the wrong way?" asked the BFG. "In our fizzy drinks," Sophie said, "the bubbles always go up and burst at the top." "Upwards is the wrong way," cried the BFG. "You must not ever be having the bubbles going upwards. The most flush-bunking rubbish I is ever hearing." "Why do you say that?" Sophie asked. "You is asking me why?" cried the BFG, waving the enormous bottle around as though he were conducting an orchestra. "You is actually meaning to tell me you cannot see why it is a scrawny mistake to have the bubbles flying up instead of down?" "You said it was flush-bunking. Now you say it's scrawny. Which is it?" Sophie asked politely. "Both!" cried the BFG. "It is a flush-bunking and a scrawny mistake to let the bubbles go upwards. If you can't see why, you must be as quacky as a duckhound. By Ringo! Your head must be so full of frog squinkers and buzzwongles, I is frittered if I know how you can think at all." "Why shouldn't the bubbles go upward?" Sophie asked. "I will explain," said the BFG, "but tell me first what name is you calling your Frobscottle by?" "One is Coke," Sophie said. "Another is Pepsi. There are lots of them." "And the bubbles is all going up?" "They all go up," Sophie said. "Catastrophe!" cried the BFG. "Upgoing bubbles is a catastrophe disastrophe." "Will you please tell me why?" Sophie said. "If you will listen carefully, I will try to explain," said the BFG. "But your brain is so full of bug-whiffles, I doubt you will ever understand." "I'll do my best," Sophie said patiently. "Very well then. When you is drinking this cokey drink of yours," said the BFG, "it is going straight down into your tummy. Is that right? Or is it left?" "It's right," Sophie said. "And the bubbles is going also into your tummy, right or left?" "Right again," Sophie said. "And the bubbles is fizzing upwards." "Of course," Sophie said. "Which means," said the BFG, "they will all come swish-fizzling up your throat and out of your mouth and make a foulsome belchy burp." "That is often true," Sophie said. "But what's wrong with a little burp now and again? It's sort of fun." "Burping is filthsome," the BFG said. "Us giants is never doing it." "But with your drink," Sophie said. "What was it you called it?" "Frobscottle," said the BFG. "With Frobscottle," Sophie said, "the bubbles in your tummy will be going downwards, and that could have a far nastier result." "Why nasty?" asked the BFG, frowning. "Because," Sophie said, blushing a little, "if they go down instead of up, they'll be coming out somewhere else with an even louder and ruder noise." "A whizpopper?" cried the BFG, beaming at her. Us giants is making whisk poppers all the time. Whisk popping is a sign of happiness. It is music in our ears. You surely is not telling me that a little whisk popping is forbidden among human beings. It is considered extremely rude, Sophie said. But you is whisk popping, is you not, now and again? Asked the BFG. Everyone is whisk popping, if that's what you call it, Sophie said. Kings and queens are whisk popping. Presidents are whisk popping. Glamorous film stars are whisk popping. Little babies are whisk popping. But where I come from, it is not polite to talk about it. Redunculous, said the BFG. If everyone is making whisk poppers, then why not talk about it? We is now having a squiggle of this delicious frapscottle, and you will see the happy result. The BFG shook the bottle vigorously. The pale green stuff fizzed and bubbled. He removed the cork and took a tremendous gurgling swig. It's glummy, he cried. I love it. For a few moments, the big friendly giant stood quite still, and a look of absolute escasty began to spread over his long, wrinkly face. Then suddenly the heavens opened and he let fly with a series of the loudest and rudest noises Sophie had ever heard in her life. They reverberated around the walls of the cave like thunder, and the glass jars rattled on their shelves. But most astonishing of all, the force of the explosions actually lifted the enormous giant clear off his feet, like a rocket. Whoopee! He cried, when he came down to earth again. Now that is whisk popping for you. Sophie burst out laughing. She couldn't help it. Have some yourself, cried the BFG, tipping the neck of the enormous bottle towards her. Don't you have a cup? Sophie said. No cups, only bottle. Sophie opened her mouth and very gently, the BFG tipped the bottle forward and poured some of the fabulous frapscottle down her throat. And oh gosh, how delicious it was! It was sweet and refreshing. It tasted of vanilla and cream, with just the faintest trace of raspberries on the edge of the flavor. And the bubbles were wonderful. Sophie could actually feel them bouncing and bursting all around her tummy. It was an amazing sensation. It felt as though hundreds of tiny people were dancing a jig inside her and tickling her with their toes. It was lovely. It's lovely, she cried. Just wait, said the BFG, flapping his ears. Sophie could feel the bubbles traveling lower and lower down her tummy, and then suddenly, inevitably, the explosion came. The trumpet sounded, and she too made the wall of the cavern ring with the sound of music and thunder. Bravo! Shouted the BFG, waving the bottle. You is very good for a beginner. Let's have some more. Chapter 11. Journey to Dream Country. After the mad frapscottle party was over, Sophie settled herself again on top of the enormous table. You is feeling better now? Asked the big friendly giant. Much better, thank you, Sophie said. When I is feeling a bit scrotty, the BFG said, a few gollops of frapscottle is always making me hopscotchy again. I must say, it's quite an experience, Sophie said. It's a raz-twitzler, the BFG said. It's gloriumptious. He turned away and strode across the cave and picked up his dream-catching net. I is galloping off now, he said, to catch some more wopsy whiffling dreams for my collection. I's doing this every day without missing. Is you wishing to come with me? Not me, thank you very much, Sophie said. Not with those other giants lurking outside. I is snuggling you very cozy into the pocket of my waistcoat, the BFG said. Then no one is seeing you. Before Sophie could protest, he had picked her up off the table and popped her into the waistcoat pocket. There was plenty of room in there. Is you wishing for a little hole to peep out from? He asked her. There's one here already, she said. She had found a small hole in the pocket, and when she put one eye close to it, she could see out very well indeed. She watched the BFG as he bent down and filled his suitcase with empty glass jars. He closed the lid, picked up the suitcase in one hand, took the pole with the net on the end of it in the other hand, and marched towards the entrance of the cave. As soon as he was outside, the BFG set off across the great hot yellow wasteland where the blue rocks lay and the dead trees stood, and where all the other giants were skulking about. Sophie squatted low on her heel in the pocket of the leather waistcoat. had one eye glued to the little hole. She saw the group of enormous giants about 300 yards ahead. "Hold your breaths," the BFG whispered down to her. "Cross your figglers! Here we go. We's going right past all these other giants. Is you seeing that whopping great one, the one nearest to us?" "I see him," Sophie whispered back, quivering. "That is the horriblest of them all, and the biggest of them all. He is called the flesh lump-eating giant." "I don't want to hear about him," Sophie said. "He is 54 feet high," the BFG said softly as he jogged along. "And he is swallowing human beings like they is sugar lumps, 2 or 3 at a time." "You're making me nervous," Sophie said. "I is nervous myself," the BFG whispered. "I always gets as jumpsy as a jog hopper when the flesh-eating giant is around." "Keep away from him," Sophie pleaded. "Not possible," the BFG answered. "He is galloping easily 2 times as quickly as me." "Shall we turn back?" Sophie said. "Turning back is worse," the BFG said. "If they is seeing me running away, they is all giving chase and throwing rocks." "Giants is never guzzling other giants," the BFG said. "They is fighting and squarreling a lot with each other, but never guzzling. Human beings is more tasty to them." The giants had already spotted the BFG, and all heads were turned, watching him as he jogged forward. He was aiming to pass well to the right of the group. Through her little peephole, Sophie saw the flesh lump-eating giant moving over to intercept them. He didn't hurry. He just loped over casually to a point where the BFG would have to pass. The others loped after him. Sophie counted 9 of them altogether, and she recognized the blood bottler in the middle of them. They were bored. They had nothing to do until nightfall. There was an air of menace about them as they loped slowly across the plain with long, lolloping strides heading for the BFG. "Here comes the runty one!" boomed the flesh lump-eater. "Ho, ho, there, runty one! Where is you splatch wiggling away to in such a hefty hurry?" He shot out an enormous arm and grabbed the BFG by the hair. The BFG didn't struggle. He simply stopped and stood quite still and said, "Be so kind as to be letting go of my hair, flesh lump-eater." The flesh lump-eater released him and stepped back a pace. The other giants stood around waiting for the fun to start. "Now then, you little grub squiffler," boomed the flesh lump-eater. "We is all of us wanting to know where you is galloping off to every day in the daytime. Nobody ought to be galloping off anywhere until it is getting dark. The human being could easily be spotting you and starting a giant hunt, and we is not wanting that to happen, is we not?" "We is not!" shouted the other giants. "Go back to your cave, runty one." "I is not galloping to any human being country," the BFG said. "I is going to other places." "I is thinking," said the flesh lump-eater, "that you is catching human beings and keeping them as pets." "Right you is," cried the blood bottler. "Just now I was hearing him chittering away to one of them in his cave." "You is welcome to go and search my cave from frack to bunt," the BFG answered. "You can go looking into every cook, crook, or nanny. There is no human beans or stringy beans or runner beans or jelly beans or any other beans in there." Sophie crouched still as a mouse inside the BFG's pocket. She hardly dared breathe. She was terrified she might sneeze. The slightest sound or movement would give her away. Through the tiny peephole, she watched the giants clustering around the poor BFG. How revolting they were! All of them had piggy little eyes and enormous mouths with thick sausage lips. When the flesh lump-eater was speaking, she got a glimpse of his tongue. It was jet black, like a slab of black steak. Every one of them was more than twice as tall as the BFG. Suddenly, the flesh lump-eater shot out 2 enormous hands and grabbed the BFG around the waist. He tossed him high in the air and shouted, "Catch him, man-hugger!" The man-hugger caught him. The other giants spread out quickly in a large circle, each giant about 20 yards from his neighbor, preparing for the game they were going to play. Now the man-hugger threw the BFG high and far, shouting, "Catch him, Bone Cruncher!" The Bone Cruncher ran forward and caught the tumbling BFG and immediately swung him up again. "Catch him, Child Chower!" he shouted. And so it went on. The giants were playing ball with the BFG, vying with each other to see who could throw him the highest. Sophie dug her nails into the sides of the pocket, trying to prevent herself from tumbling out when she was upside down. She felt as though she were a barrel going over to the Niagara Falls, and all the time there was the fearful danger that one of the giants would fail to catch the BFG and he would go crashing to the ground. "Catch him, Meat Dripper! Catch him, Gizzard Gulper! Catch him, Maid Masher! Catch him, Blood Bottler! Catch him, catch him, catch him!" In the end, they got bored with this game. They dumped the poor BFG on the ground. He was dazed and shattered. They gave him a few kicks around and shouted, "Run, you little runt! Let us be seeing how fast he was galloping." The BFG ran. What else could he do? The giants picked up rocks and hurled them after him. He managed to dodge them. "Ruddy little runt!" they shouted. "Troggy little twit! Shrivelly little shrimp! Mucky little midget! Squaggy little squib! Grubby little grub!" At last, the BFG got clear of them all, and in another couple of minutes, the pack of giants was out of sight over the horizon. Sophie popped her head up from the pocket. "I didn't like that," she said. "Phew," said the BFG. "Few and far between. They was in nasty crotching mood today, was they not? I is sorry you was having such a whirl-gig time." "Not worse than you," Sophie said. "Would they ever really hurt you?" "I isn't ever trusting them," the BFG said. "How do they actually catch the humans they eat?" Sophie asked. "They is usually just sticking an arm in through the bedroom window and snitching from their beds," the BFG said. "Like you did to me?" "Ah, but I isn't eating you," the BFG said. "How else do they catch them?" Sophie asked. "Sometimes," the BFG said, "they is swimming in from the sea like fishies with only their heads showing above the water. And then out comes a big hairy hand and grabbles someone off the beach." "Children as well?" "Often chidlers," the BFG said. "Little chidlers who is building sandcastles on the beach. That is who the swimling ones are after. Little chidlers is not so tough to eat as old grandmama. So says the child-chewing giant." As they talked, the BFG was galloping fast over the land. Sophie was standing right up in his waistcoat pocket now, and holding onto the edge with both hands. Her head and shoulders were in the open, and the wind was blowing in her hair. "How else do they catch people?" she asked. "All of them is having their own special ways of catching the human being," the BFG said. "The meat-dripping giant is preferred to pretend he is a big tree growing in the park. He is standing in the park in the dusky evening, and he is holding great big branches over his head. And there, he is waiting until some happy families is coming to have a picnic under the spreading tree. The meat-dripping giant is watching them as they lay out their little picnic, but in the end, it is the meat dripper who is having the picnic." "It's too awful!" Sophie cried. "The gizzard gulping giant is a city lover," the BFG went on. "The gizzard gulper is lying high up between the roofs of houses in the big cities. He's lying there snuggy as a sniggler and watching the human beings walking on the street below. And when he sees one that looks like it has a wopsy good flavor, he grabs it. He's simply reaching down and snitching it off the street like a monkey taking a nut. He says it is nice to be able to pick and choose what you was having for your supper. He says it's like choosing from a menu." "Don't people see him doing it?" Sophie asked. "Never is they seeing him. Do not forget it is dusky dark at this time. Also, the gizzard gulper has a very fast arm. His arm is going up and down quicker than Squinkers." "But if all these people are disappearing every night, surely there's some sort of outstreet," Sophie said. "The world is a whopping big place," the BFG said. "It has 100 different countries. The giants is clever. They is careful not to be skiddling off to the same countries too often. They is always switch fiddling around." "Even so," Sophie said. "Do not forget," the BFG said. "The human being is disappearing everywhere all the time, even without the giants is guzzling them up. Human beings is killing each other much quicker than the giants is doing it." "But they don't eat each other," Sophie said. "Giants isn't eating each other," the BFG said. "Nor is giants killing each other. Giants is not very lovely, but they is not killing each other. Nor is crocodile-dillies killing other crocodile-dillies. Nor is pussy cats killing pussy cats. They kill mice," Sophie said. "Ah, but they's not killing their own kind," the BFG said. Human beings is the only animals that is killing their own kind. Don't poisonous snakes kill each other? Sophie asked. She was searching desperately for another creature that behaved as badly as the human. Even poisonous snakes is never killing each other, the BFG said. Nor is the most fearsome creatures like tigers or rhinoceroses. None of them is ever killing their own kind. Has you ever thought about that? Sophie kept silent. I is not understanding human beings at all, the BFG said. You is a human being, and you is saying it is grisling and horrigest for giants to be eating human beings, right or left. Right, Sophie said. But human beings is squishing each other all the time, the BFG said. They is shooting guns and going up in airplanes to drop their bombs on each other's heads every week. Human beings is always killing other human beings. He was right. Of course he was right, and Sophie knew it. She was beginning to wonder whether human beings were actually any better than giants. Even so, she said, defending her own race, I think it's rotten that those foul giants should go off every night to eat humans. Humans have never done them any harm. This is what the little piggywig is saying every day, the BFG answered. He is saying I has never done any harm to the human being, so why should he be eating me? Oh dear, Sophie said. The human being is making rules to suit themselves, the BFG went on. But the rules they's making do not suit the little piggy-wiggies. Am I right or left? Right, Sophie said. Giants is also making rules. Their rules is not suiting the human beings. Everybody is making his own rules to suit himself. But you don't like it that those beastly giants are eating human beings every night, do you? Sophie asked. I do not, the BFG answered firmly. One right is not making two lefts. Is you quite cozy down there in my pocket? I'm fine, Sophie said. Then suddenly, once again, the BFG went into that magical top gear of his. He began hurtling forward with phenomenal leaps. His speed was unbelievable. The landscape became blurred, and again, Sophie had to duck down out of the whistling gale to save her head from being blown off her shoulders. She crouched in the pocket and listened to the wind screaming past. It came knifing in through the tiny peephole in the pocket and whooshed around her like a hurricane. But this time, the BFG didn't stay into top gear long. It seemed as though he had some barrier to cross. A vast mountain, perhaps, or an ocean, or a great desert, but having crossed it, he once again slowed down to his normal gallop, and Sophie was able to pop her head up and look out once more at the view. She noticed immediately that they were now in an altogether paler country. The sun had disappeared above a film of vapor. The air was becoming cooler every minute. The land was flat and treeless, and there seemed to be no color in it at all. Every minute, the mist became thicker. The air became colder still, and everything became paler and paler until soon there was nothing but gray and white all around them. They were in a country of swirling mists and ghostly vapors. There was some sort of grass underfoot, but it was not green. It was ashy gray. There was no sign of a living creature and no sound at all except for the soft thud of the BFG's footsteps as he hurtled on through the fog. Suddenly he stopped. We is here at last, he announced. He bent down and lifted Sophie from his pocket and put her on the ground. She was still in her nightie and her feet were bare. She shivered and stared around at her at the whistling mists and ghostly vapors. Where are we? She asked. We is in dream country, the BFG said. This is where all dreams is beginning. That's it for today, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed. The rest of the chapters will be coming soon. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!